Welcome to Simply Happy Conversations, a podcast that teaches you how to create a clutter-free, functional and simply happy life. I'm Narelle King, a professional organiser who supports families with practical steps to simplify their lives and create a more organised home. I'm passionate about supporting neurodivergent families and individuals like myself. Every fortnight, I also share guest conversations with experts passionate about the future of our home, health and the planet, which will provide you with actionable takeaways to create a more organised and happy life. Do you blame yourself for an unorganised, chaotic home? Do you find it hard to accept help from others, whether it's when you're hurt yourself in public or an offer from friends and family? Are you the first, though, to offer help when someone is in a crisis, like their car's broken down and they need help to get their kids to school? Today on the podcast, I'm talking with Dr. Hayley Quinn, an anti-burnout business coach, speaker, trainer, podcast host of Welcome to Self, and a former clinical psychologist. I met Dr. Hayley at the IOPO, the Institute of Professional Organisers conference in Brisbane last September. She was presenting about the 3 types of compassion and the links to burnout: compassion for others, compassion from others, and compassion for self. Professional organisers have a great deal of compassion towards others, and so do most caring professions. Today on the podcast, Dr. Hayley will be sharing tips and knowledge about compassion and the importance of compassion when decluttering and organising your home. This conversation is also a video recording that you can watch on YouTube. Let's jump into this guest conversation with Dr. Hayley Quinn. So today on Simply Happy Conversations, I'm talking with Dr. Hayley Quinn. She is an anti-burnout business coach, former clinical psychologist, and she is helping women around compassion and also around self-care in their businesses. And today, though, I've asked her on to help us talk about compassion, and especially when it comes to decluttering. So welcome, Dr. Hayley.
Hey, thanks for having me on.
Oh, no, thank you so much for making the time to join me. So I did hear you talk, and straight away when I heard you talk at the IOPO conference, I was like, oh my gosh, there were so many things that resonated, that I just loved what you talked about and why I had to ask you on as a guest.
Oh, lovely. I'm so glad.
So something to start off with is so that people understand where you are, things you'd like to do and your interests. If you were a Barbie doll, what 2 accessories would you come with?
Oh my gosh, that's such an interesting question, isn't it? I was thinking about this. And I'm probably going to go more than 2 because I can be a little bit of a rule breaker in all the best ways. I think one would be a microphone, because I'm really passionate about speaking and empowering women and getting my message across to women in the world. I think the other thing for me is, I focus a lot on self-care and compassion, and anti-burnout is really something that I feel very, very strongly about. So for me, I think some of my accessories will be a blanket and a cup of tea, a little teacup. I always have my my cup of tea at the ready for that time where I want to kind of, chill out and slow down. And probably a bag of salt and vinegar crisps.
Oh, wow. Oh, that's funny, the salt and vinegar crisps. Was that something that you loved, like when you lived over back home, or is it something you've, taken on when you've moved to Australia?
I have always loved crisps throughout my whole life. I don't even think call them chips in Australia.
Chips in Australia.
I call them crisps. But yeah.
That's funny. So if I was to come to your house, or someone from the IOPO was to come to your house as a professional organiser, what area would you love support around organising?
Yeah, that's an interesting one as well. I'm a neurodivergent woman. I have autism and ADHD. So I can be really quite organised. And then I have quite strategic doom piles as well in my house. But I think probably one of the things would be some of my digital clutter as well. Some of the piles perhaps in my office. At the moment, I'm not in my normal office. And I looked around before jumping on with you and thought, yeah. little doom piles around on the floor and on the desk and stuff. So that would probably be that. But otherwise, I think I do tend to be quite organised. I like things to be organised. So
And you like things. So it makes it easy for you to be able to find things, put things back where they need to go.
Yeah, I'm sort of most things have a place.
Yeah, I'm the same. Same as a neurodivergent person, same. It needs to be in the right spot so it can go back in the right spot, and just saves that decision making, doesn't it?
Well, it does. I think it really reduces your cognitive load, which can be so important. We are all busy people. Sometimes people are too busy. And I think when we can actually spend time thinking about things that can reduce that cognitive load, it can be really helpful.
Definitely. Yeah, I completely agree. So just to talk about like how you've turned from clinical psychologist and moved more into the business coaching, tell us about your strengths then that you're bringing into this new sort of work area. Well, you've been doing it for a while, but now solely focusing on that.
Yeah, so I've been running 2 businesses. I've been a clinical psychologist. I started that learning process over 20 years ago. And so I've been running my clinical psychology practice, and I've also been running a business, doing business coaching, speaking and training. And it really kind of evolved over time quite naturally. But one of the reasons I'm so passionate about the anti-burnout is I went through a very significant burnout myself. Probably about, it's probably coming to 10 years ago now. And through that, I got through burnout recovery. And then I've really looked at ways of how I can run a business that honors my well-being. And I can still have a successful business, but I'm not compromising myself. And I've learned a lot in that. So I think some of the things I bring to the work that I do with people is obviously the decades of experience I've got with my psychology background. I was saying to you before we jumped on, today I am a clinical psychologist. When I wake up on Sunday, and certainly by the time this is released, I won't be, because I'm not renewing my registration. But of course, I don't lose all that knowledge and experience, and I bring that to my work with my lived experience as well. I think as a neurodivergent woman, there's things that I have strengths in terms of really being able to see patterns and really getting to the heart of things quite quickly with people, where when I speak to them, I can kind of see those things that perhaps are quite out of balance. So, yeah, I mean, I really work from a human first perspective. I have done throughout all my work, but I think that allows me to give very personalized strategies to people that I work with. And I don't have a kind of template of what success needs to look like. I think success means different things for different people. And I honor that in the people that I work with as well, because I think that's so important. We've got to create businesses and lives that work for who we are, how we best operate, the way our brain works, and the sort of life we want. And that's not going to look the same for everybody, and that's okay.
And do you find that you have a lot of neurodivergent women that you work with?
I do tend to attract neurodivergent women. Yeah. Yes. That has not been an intentional thing. Yeah. But I think somehow you kind of put your light on and people see it and they are attracted to you. So, yeah, I do tend to.
So it sounds like it's very person-centered approach that you're using. Yeah.
Yeah. And lots of compassionate accountability. A lot of feedback I get from people is that, I call them out on the stuff, but I do it in a really gentle, compassionate way. So I think that's helpful as well, because there's no point in letting people just ignore their blind spots and keep doing the things that aren't helpful. So I think I've got a good way of kind of helping people with that as well.
Yeah, definitely. And I think I could imagine that is one of the strengths of being neurodivergent, is spotting the problems, isn't it? And problem solving different things, which, I think we need to really acknowledge that, because I mean, even myself working as a professional organizer is spotting problems that other people possibly, and solutions, isn't it? Finding different solutions. Yeah. So maybe, sorry.
Yeah, I was just going to say as well, I think a lot of feedback I get as well is that I really walk my talk. I live the way I kind of, what people see of me online and when I'm doing talks and trainings is who I am. But I think one of my biggest strengths for me is my passion about empowering women. I really think for a long time the narrative for women has been stay small, be quiet, don't be too successful. And I just want to help be part of shifting that narrative and really empower and uplift women.
Yeah. And that's what came across in the talk when I heard you speak in person. And I was like, oh, yes, amazing. I just love that you're helping other people to empower them to have a voice as well.
Yeah. Oh, fantastic. That's wonderful feedback. Thank you for sharing that.
Oh, that's okay. So maybe share about compassion. What is compassion? Because there might be some people, or self-compassion, that are like, I don't even know what they're talking about, because I didn't know years ago myself.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think there's a lot of myths around compassion is just kind of being kind and loving everybody or loving yourself and letting yourself off the hook and all this kind of stuff. And that people can sort of see it as quite a negative thing sometimes, that if they are going to be compassionate to themselves, then perhaps they won't be able to be successful, or they won't be able to do the things that they do. I use the definition from Professor Paul Gilbert, who is the founder of compassion-focused therapy. And that is that compassion is a sensitivity to suffering in yourself and others with a motivation to alleviate or prevent that suffering. So I think it's really important that we see that compassion is actually a motivation. It's not a feeling. There's lots of different emotions that can come with compassion, but it's a motivation for us to actually be willing to go towards suffering and do something about it.
Yeah. And you shared a story that day. I think that was for me like, oh yes, this makes so much sense, when you went to your conference about compassion as well, and your own journey, and having to look back at your own self and go, oh, am I even being compassionate to myself? Which I think was a great example.
It's absolutely been a journey for me. I probably was introduced to, I remember reading Christopher Germer's book, The Mindful Path to Self-Compassion, in 2008. And at the time I was a single mum, I was doing university, and I was working various jobs. So I kind of read the book and then put the book down and got on with it, right? I remember liking the book, but I think that was kind of it. And then I started learning about compassion-focused therapy in 2013. And anybody that's heard me speak will hear me say that compassion has been absolutely life-changing for me. It's really allowed me to change the relationship that I have with myself. And in changing the relationship I have with myself, it's allowed me to make different decisions in my life, create a business in a different kind of way. I ask myself different questions. I make different choices, and I have a much nicer relationship. I had a very hostile, self-critical relationship with myself for many, many years. So it really has been a game changer for me.
And what about the link between neurodivergence and then self-compassion as well? Because some of those things you just said then, I completely relate to from, before I actually had formally identified. It was like just nasty and you're lazy, you're this, you can't do this. Whereas I think over time and with therapy, it's that self-compassion component.
Yeah. Yeah. Look, I think neurodivergent or not, I think a lot of people have challenging relationships with themselves. And I think there's a lot of pressure. I think there's a lot of pressure put on young people. And we can develop this very self-critical voice. And I think, for a long time, there has been this kind of push mentality.
Definitely.
Push through it, come on, you can do better than that. And what we know from the research is self-compassion is a greater motivator than self-criticism. So if we can actually be compassionate to ourselves, we're more likely to want to try something. We're more likely to want to work harder at something than if we're actually self-critical. And I think the point you make is, and I think this is the experience for many people, living without understanding your neurotype can be really, really hard for people. And people can end up feeling like there's something defective about them, that they feel broken. They may have, I won't quote the exact research because I can't remember it, but, kids with ADHD, the amounts of negative comments they get by a certain age is just huge, right? So I think when people have the identification, it can really lead to a greater understanding of why you do the things the way you do them. And that can allow us to be more compassionate. Now, I had already built a really good kind of self-compassionate relationship. I was identified 2 years ago, or just coming up 2 years ago. And even though I was really self-compassionate prior, because I'd done a lot of work on that, it was almost like okay, well, this is even more reason to be compassionate to myself. So it just enhanced that for me.
Yeah. And I found the same. Exactly. Yeah. It really, especially when I hear people who say, oh, I don't want, a label for my child. It's like, as an adult, I'm like, oh my gosh, it's like the best thing. I wish I have had that, growing up. Yeah.
And again, different things for different people. Some people want that, some people don't. And, we've all got to kind of go our own pathway and do what works. Hey?
Definitely, definitely. So as an expert around compassion, what's some of the things that people can do to show compassion, especially when they're thinking about decluttering? Because that's where I see a lot of criticism towards themselves, a lot of, the names, hoarding is probably the biggest one that I'll hear them say and put themselves in a box rather than separate it as a behavior as well.
Yeah. Look, and I think it's a really complex area. Hey, there's lots of shame and self-criticism that comes with that. And I think, unfortunately, there's also a lot of stigma. Like with many things in our society, there's a lot of stigma when somebody is struggling with something or something seems different to what people think it should be. So one of the things that I find helpful and have worked with people in the past is to sort of ask yourself, what is it about my own life and my experience that helps me make sense of why I'm behaving like this, or why I'm in this situation, or why I might think like this? And I think when we can ask ourselves that, and we can look and think, okay, well, was there something in childhood? Is there an experience somebody's been through? Has there been loss and grief, and then things have changed? I think if people can kind of ask and go, well, what is it about my life and my experience that helps me make sense? We can start that de-shaming process, because at the end of the day, all behavior makes sense somehow. Yeah.
Oh, definitely. There's always a reason, isn't there?
Yeah. People don't get in situations. Like, I'm sure if you asked anybody if they were struggling a lot with whether that's, what you might class a messy house, or whether that is what you might clinically class as a hoarding disorder, I don't think if you asked anybody, was that your dream? Did you dream of growing up and having a house that, you couldn't walk around, or a house that you lived in that felt really, really overwhelming? Nobody's going to say yes to that, right?
No, not at all.
Yeah. So something along the way has happened that helps us make sense, if we knew what it was, to why somebody is in the situation that they're in. Yeah. So I think that can be a good start. And, one of the sort of, well, I say simple because it's not simple, because for a lot of people, engaging with compassion for themselves or from others can be really, really tricky. I think many people, we talk about the 3 flows of compassion. So compassion to others, which I think many, many people are very, very good at. But self-compassion, so giving ourselves compassion or receiving compassion from other people, can be really difficult. So when I say simple, I don't mean it's simple, because I know it's not. But one of the things we can do is sort of ask ourselves, if my best friend was going through this, what would I say to them? How would I treat them? Because likely is it wouldn't be the way that they are being with themselves if they're being self-critical.
Yeah, definitely, isn't it? The way we, Yeah. Even a family member, isn't it? You wouldn't speak to them like that.
No. And if somebody has children, it's like, well, what would you say to your child if they were struggling with this? And, I will often say to myself, depending on what's going on in my life, and to other people, you're doing the best you can under the circumstances you're in, with the knowledge, the skills, and the resources that you currently have. And nobody can do better than that. Yeah. It might not be where you want to be. It might not be how you want it to be, but you're doing the best you can. So if you can just start there, it is, and then it's a practice of noticing when that critical voice starts to show up, and replacing it with perhaps what you would say to your friend or loved one.
I love too how you talked about the 3 types of compassion and broke those down.
Mm.
And so is there, like you said, obviously there's the compassion for other people, compassion for yourself. Is there other things that you would do to show compassion to yourself, or practices that you work around with, some of the clients and some of the coaching people?
Yeah, look, I mean, on a personal level, I start my day with greeting myself. It's like, hi, Hayley, how you going? What have you got on today and what do you need? And I do that throughout the day of checking in, like, how am I feeling? What do I need right now? And then really listening. And then it's like, okay, can I actually respond to that and take action? There are so many practices in terms of self-compassion. There's lots of imagery practices. You can listen to guided meditations. But I think for me, I think of it as like, I know this was my process. It's like, if I was meeting somebody new and I wanted to form a friendship and get to know them, what would I do? Well, I'd ask them questions. I'd get curious and I'd ask them questions, and I'd listen and pay attention to what they were telling me. And if they were to ask me for help, I'd tune in and think, oh, is that something I've got skills to help with? Can I do that? And if not, do I know anyone else that could perhaps help them with that? And I thought, well, I can do that with myself. I can actually get to know myself as if I was getting to know a new friend. And that was my process of changing my relationship with myself. So I think it's really, my biggest thing when I'm working with people, and particularly when I'm doing business coaching as well, it's like, get to know yourself first. All the business stuff can come. You can learn business, you can learn strategies, we can talk about marketing, all that. Get to know yourself first. Understand who you are and what you want. And then start to get the pieces together.
Yeah, that's great advice.
But I think with the when we're thinking about the flows, in the work that you do, you go in and you help people. What you're doing is a very compassionate act. You're seeing suffering at whatever level it might be. It might just be if I said, "Hey, could you come? Like, my office is looking a bit of a tip." And I could do with some help with the little doom piles. It's probably just going to be like a one-off short thing, and we can get it sorted. Or it might be, somebody's grieving and they need their partner's things sorted out. Or it might be that they are struggling with hoarding. What you're doing is you're being sensitive to other people's suffering, and you want to alleviate and prevent it. So what you're doing is being the compassionate other. And I think when we work with these 3 flows, there's a lot of talk on social media about self-compassion, 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 self-compassion. And it's like, yes, but what about the other flows? Because if somebody can't ask for help, or when help is offered, they can't receive it, that can be really problematic. And I think at the conference, I probably shared
that's when you shared
New York.
Yeah, you did.
Do we have time? I could.
Yeah, you have time. You have to share that, because that was very, very. I really like that.
Yeah. So as I had said, I'd really built this self-compassionate relationship, and I'm like, I'm all over this, nailed it. And I went to New York. I'd been invited to speak at a compassion retreat, and we had a dinner at the host's house the evening before, and I was walking out into the back garden. I will say I was not drunk. I walked out into the back garden. I tripped on a step and I kind of busted my ankle, and it was really, really painful. And of course, I'm at this compassion retreat. So all the speakers are people who are really compassionate. They all came flooding over to me to help. And I had this really visceral response. And again, I won't swear on your podcast, but I was like, I wish they'd all just off, like get away from me. And it shocked me, because I was like, oh my gosh, these are people I know, they're really caring. They want to support me. And this is making me feel physically ill. Now, I had no choice because I couldn't walk. So I had to accept the help. And then at the venue, there was very steep stairs, and I had to have people help me up the stairs. People were having to go and get me food. The host ended up getting me crutches. that was such a valuable lesson for me, because I was like, oh, but I'm all about compassion. I've changed this relationship. I've got a really compassionate relationship with myself. But I hadn't stopped to think about, where am I in terms of receiving compassion from others? So that was quite a number of years ago now, and I've become quite proficient at asking for help. And that's actually really great, because you get help and you don't have to do all the things yourself, which is wonderful. So I think it can be really important that we do hold in mind these three flows and don't just think about it being self-compassion all the time. Of course, self-compassion is important, but all three flows are important.
Yeah. And that was the one for myself. And even at the conference myself, I had a huge hematoma, a cut on my head, and everyone was offering help and support. And you shared that story, and I was like, it's like a aha moment of, yes, okay, probably still need to work a little bit on that. Because it was people I'd never met before, and that they were offering all this help. Yeah.
And we're not meant to do everything ourselves.
No.
We're social beings. We're meant to be connected with others, and I think it's a gift. I mean, if you think about when somebody needs help and you're able to offer that help, it feels good, right? We feel good helping other people. Well, then we're denying that gift to somebody else if we kind of go, no, I'm fine. I can do it myself. I'm all right. I'm very independent.
Yeah. Exactly. And so I love that there's the three parts that, that we need to sort of work on and look at rather than just, so when you talk about it, you talk about it as compassion, and then underneath it, the three flows, which is self-compassion.
Yeah. Compassion to others, compassion for others, and compassion to ourselves.
Beautiful. So how can people find you, and also talk about the podcast, your podcast as well?
Yeah, so I've got a podcast called Welcome to Self with Dr. Hayley D. Quinn. It initially started off as a podcast purely for therapists. It was called Caring for the Human in the Therapist Chair. So when people go and look, the early episodes will say that. But I'd had people saying to me, this is really helpful anyway, and I'm not a therapist. And as my business evolved and as I was getting feedback from other people, I changed it, and it's now just Welcome to Self with Dr. Hayley D. Quinn. So that's on all platforms. And I talk a lot. It is the main audience is aimed at women business owners in service-based businesses. But again, I get feedback from people saying it's really helpful for just humans, because it is a very human first lens that I look through, and it's a lot about self-care and compassion. So even if you're not running a business, I think you can apply the things we talk about.
Yeah.
Some of it might be a little bit more niched into a particular business topic, but generally it's, I think it can be a really helpful podcast. I have a website. I'm actually in the process of a rebrand, because I'm moving out of psychology and purely into my business coaching and speaking and training business. So I'm having a rebrand and a website launching early in the new year.
Which is perfect for this episode will come out in the new year. So we can definitely include the links if you don't know them yet, what the actual official.
Yeah. So my website is drhayleydquinn.com.
Yeah.
So if the new website hasn't quite launched, then it won't quite represent where I'm at.
Yeah.
I think February, we're aiming for around February for the launch of the website. So that's really exciting. So, and I'm always happy for people to, reach out and,
on social media as well. And I'll include all those links as well for people to contact you and reach out.
And it's all under Dr. Hayley D. Quinn. So it's pretty consistent all across the way.
Oh, thank you so much for your time and sharing all your wisdom around compassion. And we'll have all that in the show notes so people can contact you.
Fantastic. Thanks for having me.
Oh, no, thank you. Thank you for joining me for today's Simply Happy conversation. Would you like to have a home for everything and easily be able to find the things you need during the festive season? To help you have the best Christmas season, I've created an extra special free resource for you, the Christmas Declutter Calendar. Quick and simple ideas designed to give you immediate results in just 15 minutes each day. Feel more organised this Christmas and download your Christmas Declutter Calendar from simplyhappy.com.au in the resource section. I'd like to acknowledge the Wathaurong people of the Kulin Nation on which this podcast is recorded as the traditional custodians of the land. I pay my respects to their elders, past, present and emerging.